Budget Committee hearing is called to order. Today's date is May 11th, 2021. Ms. Hayes, will you please call roll?
Councilwoman Logan.
Present.
Councilwoman Johnson. Councilman Canale. Councilman Ford. Councilman Carlisle.
Present.
And Chair Morgan.
Here. All right, we have 3 items on today's agenda, and they're all big ones: Parks, MATA, and Solid Waste. We are going to start with Parks. So I have a motion from Councilman Carlisle, second from Councilman Ford. Mr. Walker, if you will introduce yourself, the team that you brought with you today, and then the floor is yours for presentation, and we'll hold questions until you're all the way through.
Thank you, Councilman. Nick Walker, Division of Parks and Neighborhoods, City of Memphis. Brought with me my Deputy Director, Cleo Griffin, and our Parks Business Operations Administrator, that's a lot of words, Lucy Gaffney, who's in the back. All right, and so in typical fashion, we start off on the next slide with our organizational chart. I know it's very tiny there, but we broke it out a little differently this year just because we wanted to show that inside our core services, or on the left is the organizational chart. We have put the manager partners over to the right to just kind of show that they make up a large chunk of our interactions. Additionally, they are on the call today should there be any questions about their management agreements. The Museum of Science and History, for those of you who have not kept up with that, that is the new name for the Pink Palace family of museums. The Zoo, the Brooks Museum, the Botanic Garden, and Sports Centers, also known as Liberty Bowl Memorial Stadium. I'm going to turn over for the next section on strategic priorities. Cleo Griffin, as a part of his responsibilities, oversees the community centers, and that makes up a bulk of the strategic priorities. So he's going to talk through those real quick.
Afternoon. So in going through this, we'll hit 4 different sections: parks and public spaces, community engagement, youth programs, and good government. We'll start with parks and public spaces. The strategic goal for this coming year is to improve the quality of our parks, to encourage more use and a stronger sense of safety. And the associated projects are to repave walking trails and add amenities such as outdoor fitness equipment and splash pads. Implement new park rangers program to patrol the parks and engage with citizens. The second goal will be to create a better plan to connect trail systems. We will do so with projects that include the development of intermediate trails that serve as physical connectors, and then work on consistent wayfinding to keep messaging consistent. And wayfinding being a means of communicating through signage in heavily populated spaces so that people can better navigate the areas. Community engagement is next. First goal is to expand programming. We intend to do so by widening a variety of outdoor programming and activities, i.e., or for instance, expanding summer movies in the park. The second is to implement a membership model, which we are presently working on. And the projects will be to improve safety and implement access control, evaluate program usage, and dedicate resources to the most used programs, and create a sense of ownership that will help foster better client relationships. On the youth programs, the goals in this area include increasing the number of Memphians under the age of 18 participating in parks programs. Project associated with this will be to use dynamic scheduling, dynamic scheduling approach to expand the impact of the Play Your Park program. And then next, to increase the number of programs and opportunities for 16 to 24-year-old Memphians. And we intend to do so with the associated projects of promoting athletics and aquatics opportunities for youth, and by also expanding water safety and aquatics citywide. In the good government section, our goals are to improve staff customer service through training and evaluations. We actually just had a staff training as recently as today. The associated projects will be to use a class of athletics and scheduling software to improve registration and league management, which we believe will improve the relationship between citizens and our programs and staff. And then the final goal is to improve divisional communications, both internal and external. And we will do so with the associated projects of improving interactions with the community via social media posts and content and responsiveness, and then to enhance the city website to serve as a tool to promote parks activities and programs. And that's it for strategic priorities.
We look to the FY21 expenditures bridge to FY22 requests. Just have a couple of things noted on here. The largest encumbrances that we're rolling over are grass cutting, security, fire system monitoring, and maintenance. If you look at the personnel services, the increase that you'll see there is due to the right sizing of part-time salaries. And part of that was golf outperformed what was expected. So we had to make an adjustment using the revenue line as a resource to pay for more part-time people to keep the golf courses open. Moving on to page 7 there, the comparative spending of the program on slide 8. The big things here to note are the 13.3% increase in administration is mostly due to the adding of a business development position, with the idea being that similar to like our grants positions, that pay for itself over time. In planning and development, we shifted some stuff around. We'll get into that a little bit later in the personnel section, but essentially we're trying to beef up over time the landscape architecture positions that we have so that we can keep up with the project workload that we have. And I can, like I said, I've got notes on here to explain a lot of this stuff if there are particular questions, but as you can see, it's slight ups and slight downs other than the 2 positions where we are actually adding headcount. Then on to the next slide, the discussion of year-over-year change in expenditures. The major variances here, you can see, are in full-time salaries. And I'll be honest with you, a large part of this is filling out the vacancies on my staff. You know, when I took over at the beginning of COVID, it was not a real good time to, for one, hire a new deputy director, as I was an interim director for about a year, or 2, to fill a lot of the positions because we needed to make sure that my vision matched the administration's vision. And now that those 2 things align, we've gone through and filled a lot of our vacancies. And so correcting that in terms of making sure that the money is there. Likewise, moving on down, the professional services is the other line that will stand out to you. That is making sure that we have the funding in the line for things that we're contractually obligated to pay for. The biggest one is Goodwill Homes. I don't know how it slipped through 2 budget cycles that our contractual obligation of $200,000 wasn't in my budget, but we made sure it was this time. Thank you for catching that one. The other item that you'll see on there is, we referenced it earlier, and I hope you're as excited about the Park Rangers program as I am. We are piloting a Park Rangers project. The way that the budget works is approved ISL positions are put into the budget as part-time salary to begin with, and then once it is loaded in later in the year, it gets moved to the full-time line. So most of that chunk that you see in part-time salaries is either increasing our part-time salaries to be able to cover the work that we have, or a good chunk of it is the 6 full-time positions that are being added to the complement. And then utilities is, Rust Hall has to be heated and cooled and watered as we move toward the Metal Museum, ultimately the ownership of it. The revenue discussion. I'll just note something real quick. It doesn't bother me, but it's just something I want to share with you guys. A large chunk of what we talk about revenue is the Liberty Bowl. It is the largest chunk of expenses and revenues that are all self-contained within the Liberty Bowl. We have a management agreement with Comcast SpectraCorp, who runs it for us, but it is, think of it as an enterprise fund that pays for itself. And the chunk of revenue that you'll see from it and the expenses all sort of take place there. Rental proceeds from football games and beer and popcorn sales funded. Anyway, so that being said, I'll step off my soapbox. On the next slide, you'll see the major differences. Decreased parking. We just don't know. I will say one of the things that finance really helped us to hone in on the budget this year is making sure that we were conservative as it relates to revenues at the Liberty Bowl. We don't know. We think we know right now, but as last year proved, we don't know until September 4th, and there's a kickoff out there. The one thing we do know is that there will be one more football game there this year because the university has 7 games there, and they pay a flat rent fee. So we know that our revenue will increase on that side. Likewise, we put a heavy chunk out of concessions because if there aren't people in the football stadium, they can't buy that aforementioned beer and popcorn. So we want to make sure that we do not overproject revenues because that is something that Shirley likes when those numbers go up as opposed to going down. So likewise, I don't think there's anything else in there that's of note. But we've got a detailed breakout of the information for you in the explanation line. In terms of the divisional detail information, this is the personnel where I can break it down for you, what I was discussing earlier. Long story short, when we first put in the Play Your Park program, which was the unregistered activities in the summer park to supplement our summer camp, when we started that program at the beginning of the Strickland administration, it served inside of the recreation legal level for us. It's grown so much that it now is the service center or the legal level that oversees all outside of the community center's activity with the exception of golf. So this year we adjusted it, split it outside of recreation, and sent the 3 full-time positions from it over to the new service center. Additionally, because we are adding 5 full-time staff to oversee the pilot program for park rangers, that's why you'll see that shift there. Additionally, we hired a project manager last year to help with our planning and development group. This year, we're sliding him out of administration over to the planning and development organization, and then we are adding the business development position to planning or to the administration team. I hope I kept that straight. It's a lot of balls to juggle there. Here you can see on the next slide, it's just sort of broken down in the matrix of shifting around. The one thing I will note on here, and I'm sure if memory serves correct from previous budget hearings, you will notice the vacancies in park operations. That is because it's real hard to hire mower operators right now. There's a myriad reasons, and we're working on trying to address all of them. But if you talk to anyone in town right now about hiring folks who make between $12 and $15 an hour, they are struggling to do that. It is not unique to the city, and it is something we're all trying to address. Moving on to line, the major expenditures here, it's pretty straightforward. Most of what we spend in M&S, percentage-wise at least, is on those professional services contracts. That is the zoo, that is the Botanic Gardens, that is the contributions that we are making to the Pink Palace, et cetera. The other huge chunk, so between the two of them, they make up 55% of my M&S, is utilities, because it's expensive to heat and cool buildings. Moving on to what actually breaks up the professional services line. Once again, it's pretty straightforward. Liberty Bowl Memorial Stadium comes in number 1, $2.2 million. Then the Memphis Zoological Society, number 2 at $1.3. The interesting thing is that it's not death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's some pretty big paper cuts. So it's pretty straightforward in terms of the annual management fees, which are contractually obligated to our partners, who all do a wonderful job. In part, that's why they're on the line today, in case you have any questions about the work that they do. The next slide is Parks, Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise Utilization. It's something that I say regularly. We're doing a good job. Are we doing good enough? No. But do we work on it every day? We do. Our percent of certified MBE spend for the year was 46.3. Our certified WBE spend was 11.9, giving us a total certified spend of almost 60%. I tell my staff, it's funny because Mayor Strickland talks about the notebook that he keeps. When somebody comes to him and says, hey, we have to do this contract, there's no minority participation. And he writes it down because he wants to make sure that he goes out and looks and does everything he can to encourage. Likewise, in parks, we do the same thing. I'm not saying we're saints or that we should be held up for that, but I also know that it is something that I consciously tell my staff on a daily basis. Work harder, find partners. If they don't exist, encourage people to get into that field. The 5-year, lots of really small numbers. I'll tell you that it is, we are in a growth model in parks, and we continue to stay on that because as one of the quality of life divisions, I think that what we do is important. And I hope that you agree based on the comments and feedback we get from the council. I do think you agree. We will try to continue to earn that trust and that partnership every day. And that's a lot of words to say. I don't have a lot to tell you about these, but if there are questions that you have as it relates to the trends, from FY18 to projected FY22, let me know. And that is broken down. You're essentially looking at a fancy appropriation statement for the last 4 pages. So that being said, I'd open up for questions if you guys have any.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilman Carlisle?
Yeah, lots to unpack there. Thank you, Director Walker. I really wish I'd spent more time with this. All right, let's back up, I guess, to the beginning.
Sure.
Let's talk about the Park Rangers program. What is the Park Rangers program?
So one of the things that I have noticed, and I'm not alone in this, is one of the questions that is constantly asked me as a parks director is, hey, we're having a problem with cars in this park. We're having a problem with folks hanging around after dark in this park. And much as I love calling up my buddy, Mike Ryle, and saying, hey, can you send another directed patrol over there? I know that they have their hands full as well. And so to me, in looking at national trends, the city of Memphis, everything new is old is new again. In the 60s and 70s, the city of Memphis had a park rangers program.
Right.
It was a little more interpretive than this program will be. And when I say interpretive, I mean a little more hand-holding, informative, like what you think of as a national park ranger, who's there in an educational component as well. The model that we are looking to follow is somewhere between that and what you see in California, where a good chunk of theirs by state law are sworn law enforcement officers. We do not want to go to that extent, but we do want there to be a security capacity to it as well. This is a pilot program. When we originally put forth the idea, it was a little larger scale. The conversation was, let's see how it works. And I think that was a good and tempered measure. There will be 6 full-time employees involved in the program, an administrator not an administrator because it's a manager level position, but someone to oversee the program, 4 zone or area supervisors who will be working supervisors because they will actually be patrolling, and then a combination of part-time employees who report to them and patrol the parks. The plan is to start them on a Tuesday through Sunday or Wednesday through Sunday, starting with the most utilized parks. And starting with the ones where we have issues, to be frank. The car shows at MLK on the weekend, cars parked in at Douglas Park. And the idea is that by having a park ranger come up and say, hey, why don't we try parking over here? Why, you guys appear to be in somebody's rented pavilion, whatever the case may be, it is in such a de-escalated nature that it should increase, the sense of security and safety, but also the desire to go and use the parks. Because that's really what we should be promoting, is getting folks to feel safe, which will encourage them to go use the parks. Some parks, we don't have to worry about that. Councilwoman Roberts and I have been going back and forth about David Carnes. And honestly, if we could figure out a way to balance the amount of folks going there, that's what we're dealing with. But the hope is that ultimately is the situation at every park. You want to have a ton of people at the parks.
Yeah, look, I think it's a great idea. I know the River Parks Partnership has instituted a Rangers program for the last year down. Yep. It's been great. There's, to your point, an educational component. I'm happy. I mean, yesterday, colleagues, I brought up a point, probably with stronger language than was necessary, talking about private security forces. I think everybody thought, again, Blackwater, but this idea that we don't need to be hopefully shouldn't be in a position where we're having to put commissioned officers in a police car or even just a squad car out of the park as a deterrent. And typically the best way to do that is have it activated with city employees. And I agree with you. I hope that it doesn't come to that. But I would say that I wouldn't say sworn officers, but one of the things that the Parks Division should look at is contract security services in a more expanded role. Any deterrent, especially as it gets to the evening hours, is something. But I'm glad that we're starting with the Parks program. I appreciate the pilot nature of it. Honestly, I probably would roll it out in a more meaningful way, but I understand it's budgetary and operational. So got to walk before we run. Please come back and let us know how it goes. I'm very interested in that because I think for a lot of us, we hear from constituents that want to take young families to the park. There are certain times of the day that they will go and won't go, and it's not based on the weather. So I look forward to that. Page 4, youth programs, increasing the number of Memphians under the age of 18 participating in parks. This also goes back to how you staff your parks. Often Chief McGowan and I have talked about certain programs that are already in place at the city and how we can make meaningful experiences for those participating in them and benefit the city. One of those was the Public Service Corps, which I have no doubt will be a success and benefit both the participants and the city. When we look at programs like Employ, which I understand is under Director Griffith's division, I know very little, but what I do know about it is we typically place students, maybe older students. I don't know whether we cut it off if it's 18 or through the college age, in private businesses where they can learn. I can tell you from some of the internships that I have, I'm not sure how much learning I did. A lot of filing, a lot of data entry, but nonetheless, it's a good experience. I wonder if we shouldn't be looking at peer pressure / peer power to get youth 15 to 18 into parks and community centers by employing in a part-time summer capacity some of those same youth to run youth sports, right? So if I want to have an 8 through 10 summer kickball league, there's no reason a 16 to 18-year-old kid couldn't coach that team and ref and volunteer. And we already have some of these things budgeted. They're just maybe possibly in the wrong spots. Like, if you're listening, don't be offended, but in community affairs where they could be in parks, like 2,000 kids, like we could take 500 of those kids and stick them, part-time into some of these community centers or into some of these programs that might actually help teach them a little something. Because I can tell you as a coach, I've learned a lot. And so just something to think about when we talk about summer employment, actually learning, and then it benefiting because it puts personnel in these community centers in a way that's meaningful for being able to execute some of the programs that we'd like to execute on. Moving to expenditures, discussions, and the revenues. One of the things I'll say is I would definitely footnote the Liberty Bowl because I forget often too of our arrangement, and so it's easier to track. On page 9, you mentioned personnel services, and at the time I was making a note. You mentioned upping the landscape architects. We've talked about that generally, I think, last week or earlier in CIP. Why are those, will we be able to, and this may be a Chief and Shirley question too, will we be able to bill or capitalize the expense of those landscape architect expenses that are related project specific CIP and or CAB projects, as opposed to having to pay for them out of the operating budget? I know we have outside architects that are helping, but it sounds like some of these guys are going to be doing that work as well.
You're right in terms of the subject matter experts over there. That's going to be them. I would say that I'm actually talking about, and this is sort of a long-standing thing, I'm more worried about our annual, like day-to-day situations. Just as an example, I know everybody uses the Manny in engineering, how many engineers he had 10 years ago, 15 years ago. In 2000, when we built Burt Ferguson, Hickory Hill, and redid Orange Mound, all within short order of one another, there were 5 full-time landscape architects in the Parks Division, administrator who was a licensed landscape architect. Until I hired Roger last year, I had 2, one of whom was the administrator. So I know the volume of work has gone down substantially since then, but the average, amount of replacing park benches that have to be designed for pavilions and things like that hasn't. So we haven't completely right-sized there yet. At this point, I have 3. Ideally, I think we're going to have to get to 4, and we're working with finance and the administration that we've got the revenue and the support to do that.
And our landscaping is done outside of the design of, and I hadn't thought about hardscape. I was thinking more softscape, and in my head, I'm like, why are we just not doing design build through X? But I got it. Okay. Can you guys answer? Would you mind and
Sure.
touch on the capitalized expenses?
Yeah, so we there will be some that's booked that way because the Accelerated Memphis program does add a significant amount of work, as you know. What Nick's speaking to here is that, quite frankly, we came together and said, how do we do things faster and more seamlessly? We were constrained with time to get projects done, not necessarily a desire to get projects done. It was just too much workload for any one person. So we're building the bench over there to get year-over-year throughput just through our normal CIP. It is our goal, and it has been our tradition in this, the prior council and with this administration, to grow investments in parks and libraries, not to go the other way. And so that means both in the CIP and in the operating world. As Nick has said multiple times, the splash pads is an example of a way you can make quick investments in aquatics. That all has to be planned. The landscaping has to be done. You install multiple of those of the year, whereas before you may have done one pool, and you could take 2 or 3 years to design it. So we're trying to speed the throughput so that when you guys fund projects in CIP, we build it that same year, rather than planning it out over several years and then building it. So we're doing 2 things at the same time.
I appreciate that. And I know you guys, especially usually think through how we can book those. I was just curious. On page 12, and this is for Shirley, I think this goes back to our initial operating budget introduction, our exchange. I'm assuming Nick used the term conservative on revenues. I'm assuming there's a very nice intent for that, and that's going to be revenue replacement. And I assume that these larger $1.3 million, concession loss and parking loss are things that will fall in that revenue replacement category for us. And you were looking at, just as an example. Just a general.
So we're going to be informal here,
Yeah.
Chase. There are several areas of revenue replacement, and concessions is one of those for both FY21 and FY22. The revenues that roll up that are presented in the general fund overview are rolled up from the division. So it's not like we're talking about 2 different things. The revenue that they have in their division rolls up to the overall general fund revenue.
Right, and I'm just saying, these are the general things that you were taking under consideration as you were, okay. I'm still kind of just trying to feel out how we got to those larger numbers. I have a few more questions in a minute, but I'll yield the floor in a second, just I'm sure others have questions. I got some longer answers. I got some longer answers than I had anticipated. My only other question is on the 5-year trend, which is the benefits adjustment line item, and just why the variance there from the page 21, just the variance on the.
It offsets with the Social Security line item.
Okay.
And I don't know why or how, but it does.
Maybe it's one or 2
Yep.
Yeah. So that would be great if we just get a quick 1, 2, 3 on why that variance is there that way. And it is it running through other budgets? Yeah. Okay. So we'll table that. I'll just get with Alex.
It's the same anomaly across other budgets, and then it's the same anomaly between the Social Security line and the benefits adjustment line. And it's just a mechanism of accounting that you'd have to get into the weeds with Chief Ford or Alex Smith.
Perfect. With that, Chair, I yield.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councilman Johnson. And then we'll go to Councilman Logan online and Councilman Ford, that's all. And please use the microphone if you could.
How many parks do we have? Thank you, Chair, and thank you,
Yes,
Director, for
Councilwoman.
the work that you do.
We have 162 parks, and I would be doing that in air quotes. We have roughly 120 that are developed parks. We have a lot of out parcels that we cut the grass on and spray the weeds, but there are no amenities at those. And so if there are no amenities, we refer to it as an undeveloped park.
Okay. How did COVID affect y'all this past year?
It was a really, thank you for the question. I'll put it this way. It was really weird because at the beginning, everything had to shut down. But what you saw was a run to the parks that we thought, okay, this makes sense. People want to be outside. It's more than that. I think what we are seeing is a generational change in terms of outdoor park usage. And that extends to golf courses, that extends to disc golf, it extends to football, it extends to everything because people feel safe outside. We project using data from the people counters that are at Shelby Farms and Tom Lee Park, in addition to the one that we have out on the Greenway, that we've seen a 60 to 80% increase in park utilization over the last 15 months. The only downside is those two parks have revenue, and we don't. So what we've seen is an increased utilization. That means an increased need to cut the grass, and an increased need to pick up the trash, an increased need to provide services. But the good news is that because we had the centers closed down, we had the extra revenue to be able to kick over to those things, the extra funding source. And I know that's a lot to answer your question, but it's been a trade-off. Because as a parks director, there's nothing more that I love to see than on a Saturday taking my daughter out to a park and seeing lots of other people there.
That's good. Okay, you talked about security at the parks. How many of these parks have cameras that you can rely on?
I would have to refer that question to Director Adams and Director Bailey, because you guys remember we had the project where at first we started off with Sky Cops and then we pivoted over to the new Verkada cameras. I will say that I'll need to get you an exact number. I can tell you the exact number where we're paying to have a Sky Cop, but I'd have to get the other information in terms of the Verkada cameras from other divisions. I'll be happy to get that information to you.
Okay. The other question, I don't know if it goes to you, maybe to Chief Ford for clarity, for me to understand. I see here where we have professional services to the zoo, to Brooks, Botanic, and Pink Palace. Now, this is to do what? What is this particular professional service?
It's a management agreement because there are entities. The Memphis Zoological Society is a nonprofit that was established to run the zoo for us. Likewise, I'm going to screw up, but Mike's on there if he wants to correct me. The Botanical Society? Oh, wait a second, we have a board member. Am I correct in the name of the entity for the Botanic Gardens, Chief? The Botanical Society?
Memphis,
Okay.
That's the Memphis Botanic Garden Foundation, Inc.
There we go. Thank you, Mike. Mike saving my butt as usual. Essentially, these nonprofit partners, because of their ability to fundraise and just operate differently than a city entity, have been selected by the city, some of them long-ranging contracts, to operate these facilities. And this is the city's contribution, usually in lieu of what it would roughly cost us to operate.
And I guess that's the same reason later on we're going to see a setting where the city wants to give them X number of dollars in grants. Like I remember last year, some got $4 million, some got $5 million. So how does that play into it?
Okay, thank you. I'll take that. I'm Shirley Ford, Chief Financial Officer. And the money that we provided to them last year in the form of a grant was for through economic development from the CARES Act money.
But you don't ordinarily provide any assistance to them?
No.
Really? I thought that was something we did every year.
I mean, we have this contract payment, and then there are certain pieces that might have coverage through our CIP, like through the parks.
Yeah, but that's for improvement sometimes.
But no, ma'am.
Oh, okay. So they won't receive anything like that this year, is just a minimum amount based.
So what the mayor proposed in his budget is using some of the American Rescue Plan Act funds to help them revenue replace in their operations as well. And we did set aside an allocation for that to be approved to our city-owned assets. But yes, ma'am. And they did, in conversations with all of them, they worked with Director Walker and I to facilitate and give us information about how much money they had lost directly due to the impact of COVID. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Interesting. Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Councilman Logan?
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to address the speakers. And thank you, Director Walker, for all that you do, for all of your hard work and your team. I didn't have a question, just wanted to commend you on always being mindful of the community, and the things that you've put forth, I think, are really going to be a great asset to the park system. I really am glad to see the ranger idea coming to fruition. All of the parks that we have, having some dedicated bodies to be in the parks to do good customer service to the citizens. I think it's going to be a great asset, as well as to be the eyes and ears, just as we have in other parks here in the city, or other common areas in the city. So thanks for your hard work and for always being so conscientious about the park system and how to improve it, and open to creative ideas and innovation. You and Marcia, Ms. Allen, you all do a great job, and just wanted to publicly thank you for always being willing to listen to ideas and to bring ideas. So thank you for your service and your good work.
All right. Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Ford?
I'll be very brief. How many parks do we have?
160, 162.
60, and you said, but you brought up
about 120 of them are developed parks.
Okay. Let me ask you about one park.
Yes, sir.
One that's Lanier down on Brownlee.
Yes, sir.
What kind of park is it?
Lanier, it's been a minute. I really wish I brought Mike Flowers, because he would have this memorized.
Only thing I need you to do,
sure,
is go and check that park out.
It's done.
Okay. Reason why I'm saying that, I'm getting people that live behind the park that are complaining because of the grass and everything else, and they've been calling 311 and everybody else. Okay. So she finally called me at my place of business. She was very upset. I really need y'all to go. And the rest of y'all gonna cover all of this, but I need to cover my people out there.
Yes, sir. This afternoon we'll get somebody out there.
That's more important than some of these other things that you all are talking about, but I really need you all to go out there and check that. All the ones that's in Whitehaven, South Memphis, and everywhere else. We've been neglected, okay? And I've been getting people from the neighborhood called park in their homes are back to back, okay? Those are my concerns, okay? And
yes, sir.
I give the flow, but that's very important to me, instead of some of this other stuff. I want to take care of the people in my district and all the other black districts. I got issues, okay? They don't ask for much, but these are little things that they ask for. But this woman was kind of irate. She kind of sounded like me, because I do cuss.
No.
Yes, I do. If anybody know me, I do cuss. But if you make me cuss. But like I said, that's one little thing I need you to take care of for this particular. And this was an older lady, and it's kind of concerned me when older people call and they're not getting any of this and they live there. You know, it's not the ones that go to the park, it's the park. Thank you. Yield back the floor.
If I can, real quick. Any of you know this. Yeah. If you guys run into any problems, you
and
got
the lighting too.
Right. Is that, sir? Yes, sir. I'm just saying, like, don't let it get to this point. Give me a call.
Yeah. Well, they've been trying to call 311, all the rest, never get nobody to call them back that was concerned. And I told her, well, she should have called the council office. She said she didn't either, but hey, she found me at my place of business. So I told her, hey, you can always, hey, that's like a satellite office, so they can always call me at my place. Yeah. Those items concern me. We can spend big money here, big money there. You can talk about this, you can talk about that, but hey, I need to talk about my people. That's what's important to me. Okay? And I don't want nobody to just talk, try to look good, think the next couple of years you're going to run for something. I'm going to make sure you run off of it. Because, hey, I want my area just like everybody else's. I want everybody to come to the plate. You know, we talk about grants, things like that. Don't let me get to that issue. Okay. Because it don't help the right people sometimes. But this is a small issue, and I'm not getting on you. I just need to let you know, be aware. Hey, go out, look at it, and see what we can do with it, okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. We're going to go to Councilman Johnson, then Chief McGowan.
Thank you. One more quick question. Adding on to what Councilman Ford is saying, the issue is also at nighttime. That's why I was inquiring about the cameras. We got a lot of activity and shooting taking place at nighttime. I don't know if there's a pistol range going on, like shooting in the air, but we hear it all night long. And maybe we need to get some lights out there or something in order to make it visible and try to track what's taking place. But I could lie in the bed and just hear the gunshots. And then people calling me, and I'm calling the police station. But, you know, at the time the police get there, they run. So, but it's a lot of, I don't know if you can block it to keep them from getting in. I don't know what you need to do.
There's two things I'll suggest, because I've had this conversation with just a couple of a couple of council members. If we do not have a timed gate on a park and you think it is causing a problem, let me know. We will try to work it into our CIP budget. Second thing, by council ordinance, the operating hours of parks are sun up to sundown. So if there's folks in the parks after dark, that's why we don't put lights in, because it's supposed to be closed. That being said, if you run into those problems, please reach out to me, and for the next month, reach out to Mike Ryle, and we will do everything we can. He's really good about directed patrols. Okay. And park rangers, lastly, this is the only reason I really wanted to say anything. Park rangers will be working on more of a midday to early evening shift so that they can patrol the parks one last time as folks are supposed to be getting out of them. And hopefully that'll help.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. Chief McGowan, then Councilwoman Logan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to emphasize a couple of things that both Councilman Ford and Councilwoman Johnson mentioned. A, on the impact of COVID, and B, on paying attention to constituent concerns. And so one thing that Nick did not bring up, and I just want to reemphasize, I mentioned this before, but we are blessed with leadership in the Parks Division with Mr. Walker and his deputy. Just to remind you all what happened during COVID, there was one case of COVID-19 in the Shelby County Nutrition Center, and they closed the food service for nearly 6 months. That happened on a Friday. On Monday, Mr. Walker had galvanized the support of the Mid-South Food Bank, his Parks Division, and not one child missed a meal. And they did that service all the way through September. They did it for 6 full months, and they expanded it so that no family ever missed a meal, because they provided food service for families at every community center that we had across the city. And so I just want to mention that it's not just what they do in the parks. They really have the spirit of service as a City of Memphis employee and doing the right thing. Incredibly proud. So yes, we did have some impacts of COVID, but they took care of business and took care of the people of the City of Memphis during that period of time too. So, and the last thing I'll say with the lights, that is something that the mayor is very concerned about, the LEDs. We just got responses back for replacing all the street lights with LEDs. We'll be evaluating those responses so that we can quickly get those installed over the next 2 years is our aim. So that will really help some of the safety in and around the parks as well. But your points are very well taken. I just wanted to note the great work that the Parks Division continues to do.
All right. Thank you. Councilwoman Logan.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to piggyback on what Councilwoman Johnson mentioned is in terms of the shooting. because I too have received a lot of complaints about shooting, and I thought it was in the park, but some of it is near the park, which seems like it's in the park. It's in the bottoms. And you know, Director, we've talked about this for a while, about the shooting that's happening in the Wolf River Bottoms. It's right next to Kennedy Park and the Epping Way and John Baber Park. So I know we're spending a lot of money in our parks, and it's going to be important that we address that part, because even with the rangers, that is still a pressing issue that's keeping people out of the park. So I wanted to know specifically, I couldn't tell what your answer was concerning the cameras, because I do think that's important for us to have those cameras for people to see that, you know, we are helping to make it safe. So if you could address the safety aspect of what's in this budget, or the line items that are going to be addressing that, I greatly appreciate it.
I agree with both of you that anything that is a barrier to parks, whether it's safety, road conditions, transportation, lighting, quality of the facilities, any of those things are things that we have to address. To
so
me,
you were mentioning.
The Park Rangers program is the best, is the way that we're addressing it with this budget. The second way that we'll address it, you guys approved at the last council meeting. I think that when the new police chief comes in, having a conversation with her about the way that she views addressing safety in public spaces is the best way to deal with it, because every administration is different, and working with her to find a way to use shared resources to do that, to me, is probably the best way to address those concerns.
Okay, great. The cameras, what did you say about the cameras?
The cameras, I will actually have to get with Director Adams and Director Bailey to find out where we are on that. I know that there were cameras earmarked for certain parks. The other issue is, and if I had to guess what's going on, Sky Cops you can set up anywhere because they're cellular based. The cameras that were approved require power and internet, and those aren't things that I keep in my park readily available. So I don't know where we are. All that to say, let me have a conversation with those two directors, and I can get both of you a detailed list on what is out there and what the plan is for more.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair Yobet.
Yeah, and just to give a little history on the cameras, this is something that the city council put in the budget, maybe 4 years ago. And then there was some disagreement among council members who were big proponents of it and directors and who should be managing the project. And then some directors changed hands. And so it's one of these projects that has been in kind of limbo, for lack of a better word, for several years. The money was there, the intent was there, but the logistics of it became a lot more difficult in the parks than it was in the budget room. So I'd be interested to hear the status of it as well, or if it's an effort that's probably not worth continuing. All right, we're going to go to Councilman Jones and then Councilman Carlisle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, gentlemen. And those are the lines of questioning that I have. So the first note that I took here is just to ask that you make sure to share the camera information with all of the council members. A lot of times, response only go to the one who's asking the question. And Ms. Walker, you indicated that the way to address some of the safety is in the capital budget, but you've already presented that. And was there
the cover line? I mean, to be honest with you, the cost of putting in a gate is so low that if you guys will bring me now, if this suddenly becomes like the cameras and it's a free for all and I've got 40 requests for gates, that's a different conversation. But if we are talking about in my district, there's this park where we're having problems with people gathering after dark and we'd like to see about adding a gate, I have the wherewithal in the existing budget to do that, sir.
Well, mine was more so on going back to the cameras as opposed to the gates, because I know, and here's the notes that I take. We have 120 developed parks, and I know we have some parks that the community centers sit on the same property. And so what I think would be helpful, perhaps before budget, is to take a look at those. Those where we currently have cameras, I'd like to know those.
Every single one of those, by the way.
Those that we are, okay.
Yeah, where there's a community center on the property, there is a camera facing the park. That being said, it's a gas station camera. I don't know that it's doing anything to deter crime.
Okay. Well, part of it is, the way I look at it, part of it is to deter. Part of it is to find out who did something in case something did happen. So, but I guess what I want to make sure is that you have enough in your budget, whether it's on the capital side, whether it's on the operating side, for us to meet the increased demand that you have, for us to provide the amenities, for us to have nice parks for people to enjoy. That's the only, but they're safe when they're doing so. So, if we need to have Skycop cameras at those where community centers are not listed and we have some of the electricity issues, let's look at, I would want to know that going into this next year so we can make those type of investments. I know that there are a lot of parks. The layout for every park is unique, but one of the things I wanted us to have, perhaps, let's just say there's a back entrance and a front entrance, that we have coverage of some shape, form, or fashion, whether it's Ricotta or the Skycop, with our cameras from a safety standpoint. Thank you.
Chief Ford.
Thank you. While we were talking, I was texting the modern technology, right, with Director Adams, and I was looking at the last status update we had in this, and you're correct. It was 2019, and I'm looking at the list and the installation dates and when they were projected to be complete and when they were going to be complete. And we can forward that information and make sure that it's been updated. But it looked like we had, sorry, this is really small on my phone, but I'll get an update for you of exactly how many cameras were installed, the dates, and the installation times. And I do recall that we had some issues where we wanted to put cameras that we did not have electricity run to that area, that we were able to do that. But the last report it looks like it was back in October of 2019, where we had the whole list, and I think everything on that list did get completed, but we will follow up and make sure that that information gets distributed to all council members.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Councilman Carlisle.
Thank you, Chair. I had a quick question about the budget and a couple quick comments, and then I know we probably want to move on. And this may be in our bridge. So you have 15 plus open positions, right? It's a total of $500,000. We're bridging that. So, but where is the line item down? How is that flowing through your budget to the bottom?
I'm not sure that I can tell you that 15 wasn't consistent throughout the year.
Got it. Okay. That gotcha.
Yeah. It's the last 6 months, honestly, that's been the worst on folks that do manual labor. It's just hard to find anybody, whether it's 48 hours a week or 28 hours a week.
Thank you. That's very helpful. On this general conversation about park safety, Councilman Johnson, I remember in our meeting several months ago when we had this conversation about a park and there was a shooting, and we talked about this, and I made the commentary that more police would be an issue. One of our colleagues shook their head at me as if I were crazy. I agree with Councilman Jones too. I mean, if we can put deterrence in, that will help. I am pessimistic, however, that cameras will have any sort of meaningful impact, and I can speak to that with some authority just based on the sheer fact that it has not had the impact that we wanted to have downtown, based on what's been going on down here recently. And unfortunately, the only way, well, one, I'll just say is something that's hard for us to control, which is there are just too many guns out there, period. And now everybody gets a gun. you get a high school diploma and a sidearm when you graduate here. And so I often wonder if we shouldn't, and I'll wrap this up because I know it's more operations, but I wonder if this council shouldn't have a conversation about declaring gun violence a public nuisance. And we have certain ways to deal with that by law. And I'd almost be willing to fight that challenge. So that's one thought. The other is, and we've talked about this too, is activation, right? When we talk about blight and crime, it's the same. So looking for ways to extend park hours, to extend activities, to extend community services so that activity in the right form is going on. And then lastly, it just comes down to sheer manpower when it comes to public safety or security, which again goes back to this larger conversation of we know where we are with the police department. We have to look at other ways to beef up what may be some show of force at parks to make people feel safe. Park Rangers is a great program. I'm not sure it's going to get us there. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but we really should start looking at private security companies being some form of a presence, and maybe at peak operational hours throughout the summer where it really starts to crescendo because school is out. And to Councilman Jones's point, I'm happy to look at that as an appropriating body and make try and take the appropriate steps to reach those goals. But there are too many guns out there and they're definitely in the wrong hands. So with that, I yield, Chair.
All right, thank you. See no other members in the queue. I assume y'all, we do have Councilman Logan back in the queue.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a question about I think it's the Blue Brigade that's downtown. Maybe someone can talk about it, but is that what you're talking about, Councilman? It's like a private service.
I can touch on that. It's the Blue Suede Brigade. They're a part of the Downtown Memphis Commission. They are more of a can I help you find your way to the Peabody Hotel, and it's 3 blocks away to the Civil Rights Museum. And they're a presence. It helps, but they're not really what I'm talking about. But they're more of a tourist interaction wayfinding ambassador. Is probably the best way to say it.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Chair. You're back.
The sort of order from most touristy to most law enforcement goes the Blue Suede Shoes Brigade, then the interpreters down at Tom Lee Park, then what Jen Andrews has at and then Germantown actually has quasi-cops who can issue ordinances and parking violations. So there you go. Somebody had to research this for this. Shelby Farms has park rangers, and they're probably the closest model to what we're looking at.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other council members in the queue, I assume everybody's ready to move to a voice vote. All those in favor of the Parks Division operating budget signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Operating budget for Parks is approved. Thank you. Chief McGowan, do you think we could get the PR team to do a mini series on Director Walker? We're going to get him a big Texas Moved by Councilman Carlisle, seconded by Councilman Smiley. All right. Mr. Rosenfeld, if you will introduce yourself, and if you have any of your team joining us online, if you'll introduce them, and then the floor is yours for presentation, and we'll hold all questions until the end.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Gary Rosenfeld, Chief Executive Officer of the Memphis Area Transit Authority. Online with us today is Bernard Rudolph. He's the Chief Financial Officer, and John Lancaster, who is our Director of Planning and Service Development. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to present our operating grant request to you and the City Council. The budget process this year is still full of unknowns as we navigate funding from our regular stakeholders and balance overall community needs with the opportunities presented by the various relief packages. Over the pandemic, MATA has allocated its share of federal transit relief funds to keep service levels at roughly 95% of where we were prior to the pandemic, institute a major service upgrade, integrating much of the transit vision design into daily operations. MATA maintained a safe environment for our 527 employees and our thousands of customers. We partnered with the Shelby County Health Department to ensure our compliance with CDC and local guidelines. MATA replaced $12.5 million in fiscal 21 local funding with relief funding. MATA replaced over $10 million in fare revenue in fiscal 2020 and 2021 with relief funding, recognizing the need to aid our customers during the pandemic. We kept our workforce of 527 fully employed and covered by benefits, with all frontline employees earning hazard pay. We instituted on-site COVID testing for all employees and offered on-site vaccinations. MATA has done its best to maintain service levels through the pandemic. In fact, as of yesterday, we transported more than 3,015,000 fixed-route passengers since the beginning of the pandemic in March of 2020. We also transported just slightly under 80,000 MATA Plus customers during the same time period. In working with Chief McGowan and the Memphis Shelby Task Force, MATA has also assisted in the transportation of over 360 people to the Pipkin site for vaccinations. MATA buses have been called upon as a pop-up vaccine site throughout the community, and as of yesterday, 569 people have passed through MATA buses to get their vaccinations. Lastly, during the severe weather in February, MATA buses provided safe transport to just shy of 1,000 people to various warming centers. Next slide, please. As a major component of the city's book of services offered to the community, MATA is keenly aware of the limitations that different revenue streams have on our ability to project a steady income. You can see from the next slide, please. And we'll go to the next one too. You can see from the slide that the fiscal 22 from the city is identical to the fiscal 21 amount. In fiscal 21 and 22, amounts are roughly 12.5 million less than 2019, and the number for fiscal 22 contains no increase year over year. We anticipate development of a new fare policy during fiscal 22, which will bring back regular full fares and a host of new options for the public, including fare capping and the ability to purchase and load new account-based fare system tap cards at over 300 local businesses in all areas of the city. As of now, we don't anticipate an increase in state funding. In prior years, increases from the state, although very much appreciated, have not kept pace with cost increases. Our ongoing federal funding is still in a state of limbo for fiscal year 22, as the reauthorization of the FAST Act is still looming after Congress postponed the reauthorization in fiscal 21. The negotiations in Washington are ongoing, and the Biden administration favors public transit, and transit is also a favorite of Congress. We will see an increase in what will most likely be focused on capital, which will stress us in the outgoing years, as the need for more local funding for operations will become more evident, or we will face service changes, and that will not be for the better. Our last form of revenue is various forms of relief funding that MATA has been made directly available to MATA as the direct recipient of federal transit funds for the Memphis urbanized area. MATA has been able to successfully leverage the relief funds to backfill the loss of local funds, local fares, and has allowed for the coverage necessary for increased costs due to a new labor agreement and natural increases in commodity costs and increases required to effectively respond to the pandemic. A bit of history. Next slide. In 1961, the Memphis Transit Authority was created by action of the Memphis City Council and through the acquisition of the Memphis Street Railway Company. In 1975, the Memphis Transit Authority became the Memphis Area Transit Authority, or MATA. In 2019, MATA reported over 6.4 million passenger trips totaling over 36 million passenger miles. A peak fleet of 93 buses and 40 paratransit vehicles, along with 4 streetcars, provided the services. Of the proposed $70.8 million budget, 68.5%, or $48.5 million, is direct wages, taxes, and benefits. The other 31.5%, or $22.3 million, represent services and supplies necessary to support our day-to-day operations. Next. Thank you. MATA employs 527 people as of May 4th, 2021. Of the 527, 387 people work in operations, 93 work in fleet maintenance, and 47 are administrative. Further, of the 527, 88.8% identify as Black or African American, 9.1% identify as Caucasian, and the remaining 2.1% identify as Asian, Hispanic, 2 or more races, or no information provided. All 527 employees are full-time and have full-time benefits available to them. As we look at major non-labor expenditures, most of the line items on this slide are self-explanatory. However, a couple of them have some very volatile numbers included. We have seen fuel jump in the spot pricing over the last few days due to the Colonial Pipeline situation. The current situation on the I-40 bridge may also affect that as we move forward in the next few hours. I added that. That wasn't in my comment. I didn't know about that. MATA is protected by contract on the short-term volatility, but we will be in the market in the future for fuel. We have a breakdown on the next page of the top 4 professional services. Again, the number 1 item looks simple as a security services line, but as a part of the federal infrastructure, we incur additional expenses from time to time due to changes in the various threat levels and in response to local operating conditions. Other services include vehicle location services, which plays a dual purpose in providing real-time locations for internal and external use, but is also part of the overall security program. Our account-based next-generation fare system, to be further introduced in 2022, will enhance MATA's ability to partner with local services and organizations to expand mobility options to many. The Trapeze Transit software manages our personnel from an operations perspective and also contains our route scheduling platform. Next, please. The slide reflects activity through February of this year. We will report again at the end of the year. Although we are showing strong growth year over year in MWBE participation, the effort to engage women and minority businesses will continue to grow. MATA works regularly with Joanne Massey's group and also holds a board position with the MMDC. In addition, MATA holds regular outreach meetings with community to alert potential vendors of upcoming opportunities. With MATA's BRT project moving towards the initial construction phases, we should see an uptick in activity in the 3rd and 4th quarters of 2022. Next, please. We show growth in salaries and wages as we work towards improving service levels by adding bus operators. We also will introduce a new microtransit on-demand service in the Southwest and Whitehaven areas of the city. We have also been able to keep benefit cost growth under control, as well as the growth of our OPEB liabilities. In closing, MATA has been able to weather the storm brought on by the pandemic. The relief funding has allowed MATA and the city to work cooperatively to ensure a continuity of service while maintaining fiscal responsibility. But we cannot lose sight of the fact that prior to the pandemic taking hold in March of 2020, business leaders and community leaders came together in support of funding public transit and the need for an effective, efficient transit system for Memphis. Leaders from the Chamber of Commerce, FedEx, and Nike voiced their support and recognition of the need. The Memphis Interfaith Coalition for Action and Hope, or MICA, has formed a transit subcommittee to marshal and champion support of public transportation as an effective tool for bridging equity and equality in our communities. The Sierra Club has also endorsed public transit as an avenue to create a healthier atmosphere for our community. The bottom line is that MATA needs your help to establish a dedicated funding source in the future. Further, we will cautiously get through fiscal 22, but in fiscal 23, the need for the return of the $12.5 million in reduced funding will become more evident. I welcome your questions and comments.
Councilman Carlisle.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chair. What percentage of our fuel is bought in the spot market versus long-term contracting?
Well, very, very little is bought on the spot market, but we do monitor it because, especially with the situation that we are seeing with the pipeline, our regular sources could be diverted. So we keep our fingers on that pulse pretty closely.
That's really interesting. There's a crack in the Hernando de Soto Bridge right now, and so it's requiring further investigation. I cannot wait for an update, Chief. It should be interesting. I just want to say real quickly to a couple of comments you made. One, when the idea of the Transportation Committee came about and Chairman Jones was put in charge of it, I was very excited. I knew that he would continue to bring forward MATA and have these continued conversations about operating needs and capital needs. And so I thank Chairman Jones for his leadership in that committee. I joined that group of companies and individuals in a commitment to funding MATA in a meaningful, effective manner. And to be frankly honest, I'll probably be voting no to this budget because I don't think it's enough. And I'm committed to finding other resources in whatever way we can, even if we have to piecemeal it to continue to improve our service. We've talked about things like community grant programs, et cetera, and we have our different opinions, but when we look at transportation and affordable housing, we know that there's a direct impact and positive impact on the economy. And we have to be able to get people safely, effectively to and from their places of employment, places of worship, the grocery store, just general quality of life issues. And while we have a good on time, as Chief McGowan likes to remind me, the frequency is really the issue and the additional routes. So I just wanted you to know that that's where I was at, and I appreciate all the hard work and both you and the Chief in the research. There's been so much good data-driven research that's been produced and flushed out. It's hard to argue with the needs that we have because of these white papers and transit vision. So with that, I yield, Chair, and thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other council members in the queue with comments or questions? Councilman Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Rosenfeld.
Good afternoon, sir.
Looking at page 8, will you reconcile for me the 527 that you quoted and the 640 that's printed here?
Current 527, our goal is to get to 640 through next fiscal year.
Okay.
So you're seeing an increase in wages, and that will help us to improve the service quality and be able to add additional services to the program.
So you're down 113 employees currently?
Yes, sir. The real big difficulty today is hiring commercial bus operators. And we've had some success over the last few weeks in working with TCAT to pull together a training program that will get people their commercial driver's license and the passenger endorsement. The first 7 people we put through, we were able to get all of them graduated. The second class of 7 just started this last Monday. We're hoping that will continue on through the next few months. The problem that we have is that over the last 120 days, we have seen advertised starting wages for commercial operators, whether it be truck driver or bus driver, go from $15 an hour 120 days ago to $22 an hour today. That's advertised on television and in print and static and visual. So keeping up with that is pretty difficult. So we have instituted a very serious and deliberate advertising campaign We may have seen the commercials on television advocating bus, coming to work for MATA. We've got great wages, good benefits and such. We've got bonuses being out there for people to come to us that are currently already licensed, that only need to be trained in bus driving and MATA policies. And we've got recruitment bonuses for our existing employees that if they bring somebody to the table, that will happily give them bonuses as well. So it's a big problem. It's plagued us for the last year, and it's a national problem. The American Public Transit Association, I'm on no less than 2 calls a month talking about workforce development and the difficulties that transit properties across the country are having in recruiting and retaining bus operators. LA Metro just announced this week they're going to hire 800 people. From my time in Los Angeles, that equates to the need to have probably close to 40,000 applicants before they'll be able to get 800 qualified candidates. So you get an idea of the numbers that we're dealing with. We're only talking 100. We will probably go through between 8,500 applicants in order to get to that point. And some of the things that we can be doing in the background to help that situation. I'm not making a political statement on the value of marijuana or, pro or con, but it sure would be great if we could change the rules to recognize a test that determines if you're impaired, not if you've used it. Because right now, somebody who doesn't pass a federal FTA drug test, if they use marijuana within the last 6 to 8 weeks, it's going to show up, and that person is now disqualified. So if we could move past the age-old arguments of that, recognizing some of the issues that we have in our community with the number of people that do have a marijuana conviction or they use marijuana, and we can determine that they're actually impaired through testing as compared to just that they've used it. That'd be a great way. And I'll be sharing that with Congressman Cohen from a federal level. We're working with our team in Nashville to hopefully get some legislation here at the state level to ask organizations like TDOT to work with University of Memphis or UT to help develop a test that could be reliable and take us down that path.
Okay. Then the next question, I didn't get the exact number, but it was in the range of 3 million passengers during the pandemic, somewhere along there.
3,015,000 as of this week, sir. Yes.
And what was that number prior? If we look at the same time period, pre-COVID,
pre-pandemic,
what would that have been?
We're about 50% of where we were.
Okay, so it would have been about 4.5 million.
We would have been at 6 million.
Oh, about 6.
In 2019, we were at 6.4 million reported passengers.
Okay. And
I haven't seen the new health directive coming out, but I'm guessing it will affect our capacity constraints. So after we see it, have a chance to study it, work with our stakeholders at the health department and checking CDC guidelines, we should be able to make some additional changes. There is still a federal mask mandate that will be in place through mid-September.
Gotcha. And then looking at your fiscal 22 proposed budget on page 5, and this may be a question for Chief Ford, the 27,557,274, where is that reflected on the city side?
I can answer. That's not.
That is not reflected on the city side. The only piece of this budget relative to the city of Memphis is the city of Memphis grant. Everything else is directly related to the component unit MATA and not.
Okay, so the 19,170.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
so
that's the only one.
And the 27.5 is direct relief payments to MATA through the federal government.
Oh, okay. So when we look at the $12,500,000 from 2019, you are essentially saying that that number was 31 to 32 million
It was roughly 29 million
29,
in
okay.
2019, and then if you apply some simple COLAs to that, or simple cost of living adjustments, it would max out to about 32 million.
Okay. And then remind me again, during the transportation committees, there was one number that I think may have been in the $4 million range, and then another number in maybe the $9 million range.
Correct.
Give me a refresher on what type of increased service that each one of those numbers represented.
So the $4 million increase roughly, and hopefully, we're going to revolve back around to double check those numbers, but the $4 million number got increased frequency of service on the main service routes in our system. That would be line 50, line 42, I believe it's line 36 that goes down Lamar Avenue. It would also fund the alternative transportation projects that are included in the transit vision. The $9 million number, I think it was almost 10 million, brought us that increased frequency. It also brought an equalization on the span of service from weekdays to weekends, and it also expanded some of the other routes to a little bit higher frequency. We wouldn't have anything that would be greater than 1 hour time lapse. Most service being less than operating at frequencies of less than an hour.
Okay. And then I know I'm asking a lot of questions. If somebody else wants to go, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield.
Councilman Johnson?
Thank you, Chair. My question is simple. What is the beginning pay or salary for your bus drivers that you're seeking to hire?
$18.49.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Councilman Jones, was that enough time?
Well, if anybody else wants to chime in.
Okay, Councilman Carlisle says he has a short question.
Sorry, it's budget season. I thought we were here to ask about the budget. My bad. $18 an hour. Do you have how many vacant positions? Or you'd like to staff? How many again?
Well, our goal for this next year is to hire 100 bus operators before the end of the calendar year.
And how many, based on your experience, you mentioned LA, what's the flow through from application to hire?
We will probably go through between 8,000 and 8,500 applicants to get the 100 people completely through training. Our training program is about 60 days long. And there are various triggers within the training program as to whether or not somebody can continue. So in order to get 10 people out, we probably put 30 people into training. And then over that 60-day period, there is the opportunity for them to succeed or become available to other industries. And again, that's establishing a safety standard, that's establishing an ability to be able to follow the rules and policies of the organization. So we lose about 60% of what goes into training, and we go through, like I said, probably 8,000 to 8,500 applications to generate the people to get into training.
Do all of your bus drivers live in Shelby County or the area? I assume the majority would have to, just based on the need to travel.
The vast majority of our employees do. We do have a few employees that live in northern Mississippi, and we even have a couple that live in Arkansas, which I'm a little concerned about their ability to commute back and forth if this thing goes on beyond a day or two. But I would be willing, I can double check the number exactly, but I'm sure it's something north of 95% of the employees live in Shelby County.
But from a resident standpoint and as an employer, you're saying you would go anywhere you could to find employees to work for you?
Most definitely.
Thank you. I appreciate that. By the way, I also share your same sentiment about reforming employment laws when it comes to THC. And I know that there are private employers out there that would agree with you, especially around the airport, that it is a unnecessary burden and hindrance to hiring applications, including old felony charges around federal labor laws that prohibit us from hiring somebody that may have made a mistake when they were 16, 17 years old, and there needs to be reform for that regard.
Well, Matt, a year or two, maybe even 3 years ago, we removed the box on the application. And we do work with the mayor's office to on some reentry and second chance programs, and those have been successful. The problem is that there is a lot of those records that can't be excused when you're going after federal or a commercial driver's license. That being said, we have 150 other positions in the organization that don't require that, so we try to focus those folks into those other jobs and give them the opportunity.
It may be one of the single great tragedies of how the criminal justice system is set up in this country. That is a very simple and easy fix. Anyway, a conversation for another day, but I share your sentiment. I yield back.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll go to Councilman Logan and then back to Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Chair. And actually, I was going to ask the question that my colleague just asked concerning second chance programs, and are we looking at all applicants, or do you have to not have a background? And thank you for bringing that up, Councilman Carlisle. And the second question is how are you all recruiting? Did you note that in this presentation? I don't recall seeing it, and I'm just curious to see if you all attend job fairs in the communities, because I know in my district, a lot of the churches and nonprofit organizations have job fairs, kind of like in a local level, where they're reaching out to communities and churches and nonprofit groups to help them bring people in to the job fairs. So just curious as to what avenues you all are using.
Thank you, Councilman, for the question. We do partner with different organizations throughout the community. We have a very successful program with Agape in terms of them helping us recruit people into our training program. It's part of their whole family concept of dealing with issues within our community. We will attend any job fair that we are invited to. They are an excellent source of opportunity. We do a regular outreach with the Ministers Alliance here in Memphis, and we would welcome, if you have some that you are aware of, if you could send me an email, and we'll make sure that if we're not already included on that program, we'll join it right away.
Okay, great. Thank you. I sure will get that out to you this week. I yield back, Chair.
All right, thank you very much. Councilman Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think that I might be towards the end of my questions, but Mr. Rosenfeld, towards the last end of my question is, with such a shortage of bus operators, if we were to provide additional funding, would you be able to hire the operators to increase the route?
That's a great question, and during our presentations to your committee, we did indicate that we would phase in these service adjustments, recognizing the need, the difficulty it is to hire. Like I indicated at the beginning of my presentation, we are seeing some success, especially with our partnership with TCAT and in this training, so that we are able to bring to the table a whole new group of people that in the past we've had to exclude because they didn't already hold a CDL. So by doing the initial training for CDLs, we will expand our opportunities to hire more people. And if we are going to get 10 to 14 drivers a month out of that program, we would have no problem meeting those staggered starts of those programs.
And that's been going on for how long now?
Well, it's been in the planning stages for a couple of months, but in this last month, we've seen this big increase in the output.
Well, just to close and to wrap up, I'm going to perhaps reserve for budget wrap-up a possibility of increased funding based upon additional conversations that I'll have online with you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. And I should have said this at the beginning of the presentation, just to clarify. Unlike the other presentations that we've been going through in operating, although we are looking at MATA's operating budget, we do not have direct approval authority over MATA's operating budget. Instead, we're really treating this more like the grants and agencies part of the budget. But since MATA is so big and it's such an important role in the city of Memphis, that it gets 60 minutes in its own time slot, as opposed to the agencies that'll be coming to us on Thursday, May 20th. So really, the motion on the floor and the vote today is the approval of the $19.17 million grant to MATA, rather than the approval of their operating budget, if that makes sense. And you'll see, if you go to that section in your budget book, you'll see all the other organizations that we'll be hearing from at a later date as well. So I just wanted to clarify that before we go to a vote. Are there any other comments or questions from council members? All right, seeing none, I assume you're ready for a voice vote. All those in favor of the grant to MATA of $19.17 million signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Penny Chair, the ayes have it. That grant amount is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. All right, I've been told that we have some All right, welcome back from the break, everybody. We've got one item left on the agenda, and that is the Solid Waste Division operating budget. Do I have a motion and a second?
Second.
All right, so moved by Councilman Smiley, seconded by Councilman Jones. Mr. Davis, are you going to be the primary presenter? Okay. If you will just introduce yourself, the team you have with you, and if there's anybody from your team that's also online, introduce them. Then the floor is yours for the presentation, and we'll reserve questions until the end.
Thank you, Chairman. Philip Davis, Deputy Director, Solid Waste Division. I have with me Chandel Ryan, Interim Director for Solid Waste and also Deputy COO for the City of Memphis, and Delicia DeGraff-Reed, who's the Support Administrator for the Division of Solid Waste Management. Thank you for having us. This is the FY22 operating budget for the Solid Waste Division. On the slide that we're presenting right now, you'll see our organization structure, and there's no structural change to our legal levels. Slide 3, our FY22 operating budget request focuses on the collection of garbage and recyclables and bulk waste as a matter of public health and public safety. We hope to, with this budget, hire and maintain operations and support positions, and one of our major initiatives planned for FY22 is the relaunching of our Recycle Memphis campaign and focusing on developing and expanding recycling. On slide 5, you'll see our expenditure bridge, the 22 request. Our budget remains relatively flat. We have about a 3% decrease, accounted for by decreases in carryover encumbrances and our decreases. You'll see the highlighted expenditure decrease in our contribution to fund balance. We are requesting an amendment to what was presented in the proposed budget. We had a forecast error. We misforecast the revenues that we were going to get for fees, and so we would like to reduce that revenue coming in our fee line, and that will adversely impact our contribution to fund balance. So we're still planning on operating in the black. It's just our contribution to fund balance will be smaller than we originally planned. Slide 7, our program comparative spending. Our major decreases are in collections and admin. Slide 8, our changes year over year. The capital outlay, that's no explanation provided. That's cart purchases. That's a change that we're bringing our planned cart purchases back up so that we can maintain our cart maintenance program. And the service charges decrease is related to our emergency unmanageable volume contract. In slide 10, as I spoke to earlier on slide 5, our charges for services, we're proposing that amendment to our revenues, revised down from the $75 million to the $73.6 million. And again, that's accounted for by revenue that's expected due to the de-annexation or the loss of revenue due to the de-annexation. Slide 11 specifically outlines what that revenue loss is estimated to be due to the de-annexation. As we get to slide 14, we're looking at our authorized complement. In slide 16, our major M&S expenditures. Slide 17 is our detail of the professional services account details. You'll notice that the top one is we are continuing to move forward with our transfer station development. That was discussed when we did our fee increase. Slide 18, we have no leases presented for solid waste. Slide 19, our MWBE spend. We acknowledge we have continued work to do with our MWBE spend, but did want to note that our combined MWBE spend is actually 83% increase over our FY19 MWBE spend, and that's just because we had an increase in eligible spend over that period. So while the percent stayed relatively the same, we did go from $502,000 to almost $1 million in spend. With that, that's our budget, and I'll take any questions.
All right, thank you. Councilman Canale, then Smiley.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Deputy Director, for your presentation. The 49 vacant positions in collections, what's that starting pay?
One second, please, Councilman. Okay. $16.95 an hour is our crew person starting pay, and $19.99 an hour is our crew chief pay.
So obviously, I mean, this is the same story across every division that we're dealing with and across the United States. Problem with hiring. Are we offering any special incentives right now for either for referrals if you bring someone and you're already an employee, or for signing bonuses? Or sorry.
Apologize for that. I got button happy. We are not providing any special benefit right now, but we are working with our labor partners to develop in-house CDL holder for CDL training. We're piloting that.
Okay. And ballpark, not going to hold you to an exact number. If we were to pull those 35,000 households in Area E back in-house, how many would we have to hire? Ballpark. Within 100.
It would be greater. It would be greater than 100. We have typically about anywhere between 110 and 125 folks assigned per area, and Area E is roughly the same size as each one of our other areas.
Okay. All right. I just want to thank you personally. You've been extremely responsive every time that I've ever reached out with an issue, and I appreciate all your hard work. I know it has not been easy, and you've faced tremendous challenges over especially the last 13 months. So your hard work does not go unnoticed. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Smiley.
Oh, I just wanted to know, how has moving, I guess, illegal dumping to public works affect the budget? I think some of the, like whether it's equipment and whatever is entailed into transferring illegal dumping to public works, how has it affected the budget? I see there's a lot of decreases here. I just want to know.
There are some decreases, but those are largely not related to the transfer.
Okay.
We have assimilated the heavy equipment services that we had in our complement into collections. So we've decentralized those and placed those in our individual 4 areas serviced by the city to combat bulk waste and the seasonal volume.
So essentially, it really didn't affect the budget much at all?
No, sir.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Logan?
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. And thank you, Mr. Davis, for your presentation. And I look forward to working with you, Interim Director Ryan. Thank you all for being here. I just wanted to know, I think earlier it was stated that we would hear more about how you all are preparing to increase your capacity to cover Area E earlier in the presentations, but I don't see anything here that represents that. Would you just kind of elaborate on that?
Yes, ma'am. We are committed to looking at bringing, I guess, what it would take to bring Area E collections in-house. That's going to be a deliberate process for us to look at the actual cost to make sure that we understand what we're getting into and how that will affect our budget. We are also looking at a longer period for implementation. I wouldn't imagine that even if we had that decision in hand right now, that we would be able to bring those services in-house. We wouldn't have the people and equipment ready and available for probably at least 2.5 or 3 years.
So you're saying that you're putting together a plan to do so, and we'll bring that forward at a later date?
We plan to study the option and weigh that option with our other options with continuing to privately contract that service, and we will weigh those options and make an informed decision.
Okay, thank you. I am going to definitely schedule to sit down and meet with you all. I'm still getting calls, even with the new contractor, of complaints. So weighing our options is something that I didn't know we were doing. I thought we were committed to servicing our citizens in Cordova and North and Southeast Memphis, but that we were putting together a plan to do so. So now that I'm hearing something different, I definitely would like to discuss that with you all.
Yes, ma'am.
And I wanted to know a little bit more about the transfer station. That you all are, you said transfer station development. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, ma'am. We have a facility that's located at 1514 North Bellevue near the New Chicago neighborhood, that was built in the early 70s, I believe, and it's reached its end of lifespan. We know that the facility is built on an old dump. It's had subsiding issues since construction, and it would be problematic to rebuild the facility at that current location. So we are looking at our options for developing a transfer station, siting and developing a transfer station to service the northern half of the city.
Do you all have a transfer station that service that area as well? Is there a transfer station on Scott Street?
We do have a transfer station at Scott Street. It is a much smaller capacity transfer station. It's I think it's 289 Scott Street. And then we have another transfer station down on Ferris View Boulevard at Lamar and 240.
The one on Scott Street, didn't it service the north half of the city?
To my knowledge, To my knowledge, Councilwoman, I apologize for interrupting. To my knowledge, that facility serviced the more central and eastern part of the city, but I don't believe it has the capacity to handle the number of homes, to run the number of trucks that we would have to run to handle areas A and B, the north half of the city. It also is a very, very old facility. That's why it's largely underutilized, because that facility is one of our oldest facilities. I wouldn't even guess how old that transfer station is. It has 2 chutes, one's operable occasionally, and the facility is very small for parking vehicles and for basing a large number of employees out of it.
Okay. Is there maintenance done on these transfer stations along the way, on all of them? Or
yes,
upkeep?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. There's regular upkeep. They are depending on the type of facilities that we have. Bearsview is the oddball. It's the newest of the facilities, built in the late 90s. It's what they call a drop load facility, where the tractor trailer pulls in and the waste is loaded from a tipping floor, an elevated tipping floor, and pushed in using a wheel loader. The facility, the Scott Street facility and the Bellevue facility are a little bit more antiquated. They are hydraulic facilities, that are hydraulic ram facilities that the waste drops into a mechanism and it rams the waste and compacts it into the trailer for transport to the landfill. Because of the hydraulics and the mechanism involved, they tend to be a lot more maintenance intensive and don't last as long.
Okay, thank you for that explanation, and I appreciate your feedback. I'll yield back to you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I flipped away from my page, which had the Q on it. I believe it was Councilman Warren and Councilman Carlisle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the complement page, I think that's page 14, I noticed we have very few people on recycling. Is that because we're not doing it now? And will some of the collections people be moved to that once recycling starts up? Or am I misreading this?
You're exactly right that is what it looks like, but that is not correct.
Okay.
We house all of our collection staff, including those used in recycling, in collections.
Except for the 8, 7, and 8 here in recycling. So what do they do?
That is the admin, and they also run, there is a minimal staff in our composting facility that run composting. But I know I see why that's confusing, and actually we've had internal discussions about how to break that out. It becomes problematic because when, I guess, a crew today that's picking up garbage may be running a recycle truck tomorrow.
I understand that. I just didn't understand the numbers and the way it was labeled. But maybe you should put that admin.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Carlisle.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm sorry, and I missed part of that. It's my selective hearing. But yes, I just on that note, I don't know about the rest of my colleagues, but I constantly get text messages and calls about, like, are we recycling? What is the grand conspiracy?
Right.
Obviously, we had a COVID crisis in the middle of this, but I feel like the questions that I'm getting are coming from people who've had concerns about our recycling over the years. Today is probably not the time to talk about that, but Councilman Smiley, maybe we could schedule like a brief segment next council meeting to talk about that, because I get inundated with like, hey, did you know the city only recycles like 10%, or they're not recycling at all, and to be 100% honest with you, I couldn't answer the question.
Right.
I really don't know. Sounds like the Pelican brief here, but and then as far as the transfer station, I think Councilwoman Logan asked about it. We were not on the council, but as a part of our capital plan, dealing with that transfer station was in there. Is that not a capitalized expense? What's the deal there?
We had planned with the fee increase. One of the rationales for the fee increase was for the solid waste fund to pay for the transfer station. So part of the intent of the fee increase, the size of the fee increase that was passed, was to amass enough funds to pay for the transfer station out of the solid waste fund and not have to go to CIP.
But really with cash is really more what you're saying.
Yes, sir.
I don't know. What's the life of the transfer station? What's the asset cycle?
50-ish.
It's a 50-year asset on 30-year debt, and debt's pretty cheap. I mean, I got it. It's a conversation worth having, but if we always borrow pretty cheaply, but now we're at historic lows. But I get it. It's a cash management conversation. Chief?
Zero is pretty cheap.
Yeah.
And that's the rate on cash. So
right. Well,
that was our idea, to have a sustainable fund. And just to reiterate, when we raised the rate for that, it was to cover the cost of collections, the increased cost of collections, to make sure every year that we added new equipment to the fleet to keep it modern, that we added money so that we could pay for a new transfer station in FY 2027, and that we had money in the operating reserves because of the variability of charges each and every year. And as you know, we had a spiral downward before, so we wanted to have that very solid reserve. That's what all those funds were expected to go for. And so I guess the only other thing I will say while I'm speaking is that we intend to provide reliable solid waste service for everyone, no matter where they reside in the city of Memphis. And speaking to the Area E issue, we did make a commitment there. Our commitment is to provide reliable solid waste service there. Our commitment was to examine all of the options before us, and that's exactly what we are doing. And our commitment is to make the very best decisions so that we get the reliable service out there. We are and will continue to, and have always throughout our history, had complaints about solid waste. It's the one thing that we touch each and every household with in this city of Memphis 23 million times a year. We touch a household with a solid waste vehicle. So, and when we miss someone, it's a very personal experience. I know, I hear it at my house. They missed our trash today. So I understand how personal it is to people. Our aim is to minimize those and to come back as quickly as we can. So it's more than you want, Councilman, but that's the.
Look, I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that as it is anybody. We won't get into debate about the weighted cost of capital and whether the interest is zero versus inflation and what our money could be working for in the marketplace and that delta. But that being said, I hear you. Well, I've seen our investment portfolio. It's not, we're not hitting a bunch of hedge funds, but I understand. We've got a few hedge fund managers, but my point is we're not chasing 20% returns. I got it. Moving to your 5-year trend, I just had a couple questions about the flow of cash, and mainly because, and I apologize, I didn't super do my homework like I should. Private apartment collection, why do we show that as an expense for us? I would assume that that's a direct contract, or unless, is that a city-owned asset like HCD that we manage?
No, that is, private apartment collections it's a revenue. Customers are billed through MLGW, and we collect that money.
So we do pay it back on their behalf.
And then pay it through to vendors that are servicing those locations.
Contract collections is what we're talking about with whether it was Waste Pro or Team Waste.
Correct. Plus our emergency unmanageable volume contract.
Right. And then the disposal, for contract disposal, that is, we have our city-owned landfills, and then do we pay to, what is disposal?
We have a city-owned landfill that is active, not in use, according to the state, which means it is a permitted facility that has never been constructed. It's down in Inslee Bottoms.
So this is all of our waste disposal?
This is all waste. Contract disposal is all waste going to one of the 5 landfills that we utilize.
Got it. All right. General fund transfers. We, the general fund, loaned solid waste $7 million this past fiscal year. Where is the payment? Is that
the 750?
That's the payment out.
And that's it's $7.5 million that was loaned, and we are paying $750 back each year over 10 years.
Perfect. And then last question on just the flow of cash. Why, and this may be for Chief Ford, or we can be informal. I don't mind chasing Shirley. It's budget season. Everybody gets to be friends. Why are we making transfers back to the unassigned fund balance? Is that just because we have a surplus cash above and beyond what we're netting for, or is that a special?
Special revenue fund.
Yeah. It's inside of that fund.
It is because of the reporting requirements of a special revenue fund. You have to show,
Got it.
when you look at our others, it's just, you have net, but this one you have to show whether you're contributing to or from your contribution to fund balance or from fund balance.
And is that the same how we show FSS 190 on the next page? So it's just literally summing up the disposal fee and the inspection fees into one line item just for accounting purposes. Okay. All right. Last thing, and I know it sounds like I'm beating a dead horse on this, but I understand I think you're going to confirm this for me. The reason that we have to actually show the $4 million in CARES that we appropriated for personnel is because it is a special revenue fund.
So we actually took money from that cash and gave it to a special revenue fund. So you have to show it as federal money. Which
makes it really easy for a dummy like me to see. But I understand from your standpoint why we don't have to and don't show it in other places. But it's super simple to see, like on a division level. We appropriate. As a council, we got a long, big sheet of appropriations. Right. We saw it solid waste. It was easy to see, hey, this is going to solid waste versus the wrap up. And again, I got it. I mean,
so there is in our general fund, you do see that same federal grants revenue line, and then you're absolutely correct how it was allocated out.
Right. I guess, and again, I'll leave it alone because really we just probably need to sit down and talk. It's more of a, I understand the why. It's more of, in my mind, when I'm going back through in my head and I'm like, wow, did we really run over in IT this year and we shored that up with CARES dollars, or was it really in police overtime and we did, we really spent CARES dollars there versus, maybe, obviously amending would be the wrong language to use, but just really understanding we had a lot of police overtime, right? We had a lot of fire overtime. We had a lot of solid waste. We know, and so it's more to that point of saying, if I were to pick up a spreadsheet and footnote to myself, I would know if I were running this business where all of that money really went in the sense of, and I guess you could see it more in the expenditures line, but it's more of seeing that balance out from and I'm talking elementary accounting standpoint of, here are my debits, here's my credit, now it balances. And that was always kind of my thing. So, yes, Director Davis, I appreciate you, but Shondell, I really appreciate you. I think this council, the city owes you a debt of gratitude for stepping in and really grabbing on to a high-speed train and becoming a solid waste expert in a very, very short amount of time. And so I would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that and really appreciate all the work that you've done and continue to do. I know it's every little girl's dream to grow up and work in trash. So thank you so much for that. But to both of you, thank you. And I know this council, myself probably primarily, can be very heavy-handed sometimes, and we don't often give pats on the back. It's mainly more of transferring complaints, but I'd be remiss if we didn't give you both a pat on the back and say, in very difficult circumstances, really appreciate all the hard work and both of you stepping up. So with that, I yield back, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll go to a question I had and just help me with some of the math on it, where if I look at the FY21 forecast, I'm looking at full-time salaries on page 20 or page 176 of our big budget book. It adds up to about $16.4 million. And what you all are requesting for FY22 is about 20.9. And so it's a 28% increase in full-time salaries. And we only have 72 vacant positions. I see Chief Ford ready to jump on this before I even finish the question. Chief Ford.
Actually, Deputy Ryan, I talked about this earlier today. As you know, we're moving through a quick transition and Deputy Ryan getting prepared to be a part of this presentation. There is a miscalc in the forecast. Yes, it appears that we're missing a section when the team was forecasting. So I will have my budget team go back with Ms. DeGraffi to ensure that we get that number right. But yes, the forecast is short. Okay. About, I think it's $3 million. Sorry.
That makes me feel better because I was sitting here trying to figure out how this works.
No, that's a very valid question.
Okay.
Chairman Morgan. But yeah, as we were going through the numbers, that's okay. We discovered that there was an issue with the forecast.
So if it were, and what we have here is 16.4, if you think it's going to be greater than that, so one of my questions, well, no, I'd have to add up the totals from previous years. Why don't y'all just get that back? And I'll go to one of the questions which touches on Councilman Carlisle's question about Social Security and the benefits adjustment. In every other budget, those two line items do kind of offset, but not in this one. What's now? Now I do have a question about what's going on there, where we've got seemingly $400,000 difference.
Because the members of the solid waste do not participate in the pension. They are Social Security. They are Social Security employees.
They opted in there.
Okay, that's the answer. Well, the question was not so much about the numbers or the totals, but the variation where we adopt a budget of 1.3, but then we forecast below $1 million and we adopt another 1.3, and we've never been as high as 1.3, even going back through the past 5 years. It just seems like 1.3 is a couple $100,000 higher than we've ever been, including this year's forecast. So we're, almost a 50% increase.
So I think part of that too is going back to FY19 and FY20, where we were hitting about 1.1 or 1 million in Social Security, and then the issue that we have now with the large number of vacancies we have.
Okay.
So as the actual salaries go up, as will the expense. So, as we budget for full complement, that's a calculation that budgets as well.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is also to Councilman Carlisle's point about a discussion for another time. All of a sudden, we picked back up with recycling 1st of April, that first week. And it's been missed at my house the last 2 weeks. I'm getting a lot of comments from constituents and my own household about what's going on, and I honestly don't have an answer. So I think that needs to be a committee discussion about just an honest assessment of where are we with recycling and what kind of expectations should we set. Because people get it if we're having problems, but missing expectations is not fair to anybody. And then maybe also a future look into what is the future of recycling in Memphis or the entire just industry across the country. Okay, any other council members? Councilman Warren and then Carlisle.
Yeah, I sort of looked at this in my home when the trash wasn't picked up, that we were running behind. And I just left my containers out there, and we're Friday, one day it was Monday, one day it was Saturday, but it always got picked up. It just was late. And I think Councilman Morgan's comment about what can we do to change expectations. You put them out there on your day. If we're not there, we're going to be there the next day or the day after. And because we haven't said that, I think that may be something that will calm people down a little bit, just knowing that we're running behind, but we're coming. And if we miss you today, we're coming tomorrow. And, call and leave us a message. If we happen to miss you by mistake, then we know we're coming back. Can we do something like that?
Yeah, yes, sir. We can. We know that we've experienced especially in our Area B and Area C, which would be the Walnut Grove corridor, just north of, if you consider Poplar the dividing line, just north of Poplar, just south of Poplar, those B and C areas have been experiencing some delays in recycling, and we're shoring that up right now. It's taken us a minute, but we need to be better with messaging.
I've been listening to Area E and how bad they've had it. I haven't complained.
Yes, sir.
Okay, but I think the way you keep people from complaining is we got to let them know we're running behind, and I don't know what mechanism we have to do that. I know you put the little messages out on the cans for people, when there's going to be a holiday or something. Maybe we need to do sort of a blanket messaging in a way that will allow people to know, we're short-staffed, COVID's hit us. We're still trying to hire, anybody, give them a call. And also, we may be running late. And I think that'll make a big difference in the number of calls we get, because we'll let people know what's going on.
Hey, Councilman Carlisle?
Thank you, Chair. Speaking of contracting, by the way, it sounds like we got a trash Twitter account coming. Contracting. So we were paying roughly $15 a household in Area E under our contract with Waste Pro, 15 and change. We're now paying, I think, 22 and change.
25.44.
25.44, thank you. So 25 and change. Huge delta. Or how is that? I mean, are we reflecting that in? Was it 30,000 households at $10 a pop?
It's 35,610 about.
So,
and,
so $3.5 million.
It is baked in there.
Okay, because I guess because the question really is, and it goes back to the conversation we've been having with the administration and the public, which is like, what's the timing of team waste, and then either a potential RFP for all or part of that area, and then basically, how long is this quote emergency contract or temporary contract going to last?
We're planning a 6-month with some options for renewal just in case it takes us, but we don't forecast it to last beyond June 30 of 2022.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair. You're back.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Logan?
Thank you, Chair. What is the community improvement position? There's in the list of vacancies, there were some community improvement positions open.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Our community improvement service center is our heavy equipment. That used to be what was handling illegal dumping, but have been incorporated into our collections. But those positions are associated. They're lead heavy equipment operators and truck drivers drive those single axle dump body trucks that follow the loaders picking up illegal dumps and other oversized bulky materials.
So it was for the illegal dumping. Is this the area we switched over to code?
These positions have transitioned from illegal, focusing primarily on illegal dumping, and that is in process. It's kind of an ongoing process to transition, but this is that equipment that deals with those bulky, oversized, problematic materials that people put out that can't be picked up by hand, and the wheel loaders are necessary because they have a different capability and weight capacity than our normal grapples that we use, the rear steer grapples, the quad trucks that you see.
Okay, and what is the, thank you for that explanation. What is the difference in the out of rank pay from the adopted budget to the FY22? There's a substantial difference, and I just wanted to see if you could elaborate on that.
It's up here.
Chief Ford.
Thank you, Councilwoman Logan. I'm trying to identify the difference that you are speaking about. For our out-of-rank pay for the FY21 adopted budget is $257,000, and for the proposed is also $257,000. God, could you kind of point me where you're
Okay,
looking?
I'm sorry, I see. Thank you for clearing that up. It looked like, that looked like a 5. I'm sorry. I'm looking at this small writing.
Okay.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Thank you, ma'am.
Why the budget is so high based on the soil?
We are planning to, like I said at the beginning, we're piloting developing in-house CDL holders. And when somebody gets, say, a crew person that works on the back of a truck gets a CDL, when you have absences, we pay that crew person out of class as a crew chief. We also pay an incremental amount for them to be available as a CDL holder.
I hear you. I get it. I don't understand it because I'm not in solid waste every day, but when I look at your trend line,
right,
year in, year out, you're almost, what is that, 4x your historical trend line in budget.
Right.
I would never run a budget that way myself. That's just me. Okay. That seems very hefty. Okay. But right, so you're 85. You're forecasting 60. You had 1 year that you were at 102. I don't know what 18 you were out, but you're running at 257 in your forward budget. Seems heavy, but again, I'm not in there every day.
So if I understand this correctly, this is a new program that they are implementing to entice more of the employees to go get their commercial driver's license so that they can operate the trucks. And if I'm not mistaken, we were trying to do this year. We had the issue with COVID, and the plan is to do next year. But you can see, obviously, the forecast is much lower than the adopted budget.
Yeah, I hear you. It's just, okay. All right, we'll see what happens. Good luck.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Are you all set, Councilman Logan?
One last thing was about the iPads that you all were supposed to get to be able to communicate while the drivers are in the truck, to communicate to the other trucks or back to headquarters. Have they started using those iPads and in all of the trucks? And second thing is, you are going to be able to email or text the employees, the customers when they were going to be missed. You were going to text them or email them and let them know when to expect to be picked up. And are we doing that yet? And if not, when will we get to do that?
We do have tablets ready for deployment with our crews. We are working with our labor partners in order to get that initiated. As far as the emailing of the customers, I know that is a capability of the technology once fully developed. I don't have a timeline on that. That's a little we're learning to walk right now with this technology with our crews and implementation in our trucks. But we are hoping to maximize our capability with Rubicon, the company we're using to deploy this technology.
So we actually have the iPads or tablets. We purchased those, but we're not using them yet.
Yes, ma'am. The tablets are in place and ready to deploy, but they have not been fully deployed. We've run several pilots with crews in identified areas. The first thing we'll do is use them for route optimization to make sure that we really the idea is to end up giving turn-by-turn directions to our employees, to our crew chiefs, so that they know our routes. The technology is available where they can confirm service delivery. So that would be to determine. I guess we'd be better capable of determining when a miss has occurred, and so that's
clarify as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Solid waste budget is approved. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you and good luck.
Yes, sir. Thank
Appreciate all the hard work y'all been putting in and looking forward to onward and upward.
Right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Compost program.
Any other business for this committee this evening? Oh, that's right. So just to remind council members, in case they didn't see it, at Impasse Committee last night, the Impasse Committee sided with the Fire Association, and so it was if continue to be approved by the council, that'd be a $1.7 million additional expense to the budget. We had about $300,000 of additional revenue. So as it stands, if that impasse decision were to continue, just let everybody know we'd be, I guess, in the red by about 1.4 million. So keep that in the back of your minds as people are considering amendments during the wrap-up session or potentially other operating budgets of the city. Tomorrow we have Public Works and Sewer and Stormwater and the always controversial Finance Division. And